deck. Coming up, keeping the Regan ready for anything requires regular resupply. But for the crew, it's a high-wire act at sea.
You gotta give it more. Whip it, pull it towards you.
When it comes to powering the supercarrier USS Ronald Reagan, the U.S. Navy spared no expense. Only the planet's most powerful energy source would do. Like all Nimitz-class carriers, the USS Ronald Reagan is powered by 2 nuclear reactors embedded deep in the ship. The reactors are highly classified and heavily protected.
It's built to go into war, so it's surrounded by lots of steel and then some more steel. It's much more rugged than a commercial shore-based power plant.
Inside the reactors, uranium atoms split apart in a controlled nuclear fission reaction that releases energy to heat pressurized water. The extremely hot liquid then passes through a heat exchanger, producing steam to drive a turbine, spinning a generator to produce the ship's power. The high-pressure steam also runs the catapults, and it powers giant turbines deep inside the ship, turning massive shafts and rotating 4 enormous bronze propellers. At the back of the ship, 2 huge rudders weighing 50 tons each handle the steering.
We have 2 reactors on board the ship. One reactor can pretty much do all the things we need to do on board this ship. So having 2 reactors provides us some redundancy and some flexibility.
The Reagan's reactors and turbines also provide electricity to power the entire ship, from radar screens to the hangar bay doors to the aircraft elevators. Altogether, it's about 64 megawatts, enough electricity to supply a city of 100,000. And the reactors are designed to run for more than 20 years before replacing their uranium fuel. Yet keeping the deployed ship continually supplied with food, fuel, parts, and other critical items is another matter. This responsibility falls on the shoulders of the supply department.
Logistics is really the thing that makes our Navy really important and give us the ability to go over the horizon. I have $475 million worth of inventory of repair parts, and not only for the ship, but for the air wing as well. And that includes, pens and pencils, and includes, radars.
About once a week, the crew performs a connected replenishment, or CONREP, bringing aboard new supplies, fuel, and fresh food from a Navy supply ship.
Yes, sir. We can run their 2 to our 5. It'll just fairly a little bit after. We can still run it, Captain.
To make the transfer, both the carrier and the supply ship must maintain a constant speed and an exact distance of 160 feet apart for 3 to 6 hours. Commander Eric Patton is the Reagan's navigator.
We drive the ship more precisely than I drive my truck. It's tiring. Because you're focused for so long, there's some fatigue that does set in.
The carrier's crew begins the operation by shooting 4 pairs of lines across the 160-foot gap.
We shoot shot lines, which are just very small, thin lines of a nylon cord, and then we pull those cords over with bigger line, and then bigger line, and finally we pull over the big heavy wire.
Two CONREP stations are set up to handle fuel hoses, pumping up to 3.5 million gallons of JP5 jet fuel into the carrier's fuel tanks. 2 other stations handle food and supply pallets, using a pulley-operated gull wing crane to deliver them right into the Reagan's hangar bay.
I'll bring upwards of 700 pallets sometimes worth of food and material.
The CONREP operation is inherently risky. If the ships stray off course, the wires could stretch and snap, recoiling like a deadly whip. Any loose clothing could catch on a wire and drag a crew member overboard.
And you did a good job whipping it, but you gotta give it more. Whip it, pull it towards you.
Understand Lake Champlain.
Deck Department Head, Lieutenant Commander Cleet Strasbaugh, and his safety crew watch the operation closely.
All the guys in the white hats are safety officers. Their primary job is to make sure that no safety violations take place. People don't get too close to the deck edge, temporary lifeline. They're not wearing any rings, watches, or any jewelry.
Finally, the supplies are on board and the CONREP's complete. Managing supplies is tough, but managing sailors is even tougher. It takes planning and hard work to keep daily life running smoothly on a ship this big.
We are a floating city. We have our own fire department. We have our own hospital. We have our own security, our own police department. So when you think of all those things and how much it would cost a city to run that type of an operation, that's really equivalent to how we are.
Feeding all of these hard-working sailors is Chef Monica Arias' top priority.
It's extremely important for the crew to be well fed. They're working 16, 20 hours a day up on the flight deck, so they're going to want to come down and have some good food. And food keeps you happy. You run on your stomach. And if you're hungry, how are you going to work?
23 hours a day, every day, the Regan's 5 mess halls serve up 18,000 meals. From 11 dry storage rooms and 6 cold storage units, the Regan's cooks create a tremendous feast. Daily, the Regan bakes and serves 300 loaves of bread, nearly 2,500 fresh eggs, and more than 7,000 pounds of meat. When this crew cooks up a feast, they do it big. From hot dogs to fried shrimp to steak.
People's favorites would probably be like spaghetti. Spaghetti night is crazy. Or obviously steak. We have lines up to the hangar bay for steak, waiting forever just for a steak. So it's definitely our favorites.
It's quite obvious we're hungry.
Preparing lots of food also creates lots of trash, and there's no room to keep it all on board. But technology is on hand to help. In this machine, plastic is shredded, then melted and pressurized into giant discs called hockey pucks. They're stored in the hangar bay and then recycled on land.
We make about 100 of these in this plant alone every day. That's about 600 or 700 bags of plastic. That's a lot. Get a bag of cans. Cans are already in there.
Sailors drink 600,000 cans of soda every year. The metal is shredded to bits, then sent overboard.
Everything that we put over the side is biodegradable. Saltwater just eats it up.
Life on the USS Ronald Reagan is dominated by one thing: the ship's layout. Moving around inside this multi-level maze is complicated, confusing, and often exhausting. Cross-sectional maps of the ship are posted in passageways to help the crew find their way around. But if you stop paying attention to where you're walking, you risk injury. Watertight doorways and strengthening frames line the passageways through the ship. Each of them has a circular opening that's smaller than the passageway itself. Duck, or you'll smack your skull. And make sure to step high, or the hatch's bottom lip, or knee knocker, will smash your shins. It's the reality of life on this supercarrier. Coming up, an inside look at the F-18 Hornets on board the USS Ronald Reagan and the powerful ordnance they carry. The supercarrier USS Ronald Reagan. It's a mobile combat airport with dozens of highly trained pilots flying the Navy's most versatile strike fighter, the F-18. These powerful planes require explosive weaponry to complete their missions. So the Regan is packed to the gills with 10 million pounds of ordnance. On board the carrier, the Air Wing includes 7 squadrons of more than 60 planes and nearly 2,000 sailors. Most crew are in support roles. Only 100 are pilots, separated into tightly knit squadrons of 10 to 15.
Typical pilot in the Air Wing who flies these F-18s, for example, it's going to be a lieutenant, mid to late 20s, maybe 30 years old.
We're launching aircraft, catapults 2, 3, and 4. Stand well clear. Shoot 'em up.
The F-18 Hornet is the heart of the Air Wing. It's the Navy's top strike fighter aircraft, thanks to its reliability and performance during combat. The F-18 is a versatile aircraft. It can easily switch between attacking targets on the ground and targets in the air.
If you're going into attack a target and you have to defend yourself against enemy aircraft on the way in and on the way out from that target, the Hornet can do that. And it's an extremely pilot-friendly aircraft to fly.
The Reagan's Air Wing has 4 squadrons of F-18 jets, almost 50 planes in all.
Their primary function here is overland strike projection. That's really what the carrier is all about, being able to project force across the horizon.
The Reagan has 2 F-18 models, the $29 million Hornet and the latest version, the $54 million Super Hornet. Measuring 60 feet 4 inches long with a wingspan of 44 feet 11 inches, the Super Hornet has a top speed surpassing Mach 1.8. More than 1,300 miles per hour. With that kind of speed at their disposal, these planes can create a sonic boom as they easily fly past the sound barrier. The F-18 Super Hornet carries up to 11 pieces of ordnance on every flight, attached to hooks on the wings or body of the plane. Some weapons are guided by GPS, radar, or heat-seeking infrared, like the Sidewinder missile. Others are simply dumb bombs, heavy, unguided explosives weighing between 500 and 2,000 pounds. And then there's the Hornet's powerful gun, a 20-millimeter cannon that shoots 6,000 rounds per minute. Every piece of the ship's ordnance is kept in one of 34 storage units, called magazines. Flight preparation begins in a well-protected assembly room deep inside the carrier, 5 decks below the waterline. Here, unarmed weapons are assembled for combat by a well-trained crew of ordnance handlers, known as the G3 Division.
They're trained as a cohesive unit, and through that training, that's how we become more proficient in handling weapons.
The crew is preparing a 500-pound Mark 80 series unguided dumb bomb. On the bomb's back end, an aerodynamic fin is attached. It'll help the bomb fly more accurately to its target. At the same time, a nose plug is installed on the front end to give the bomb greater target penetration. The crew adds a safety switch and inspects the bomb. A pneumatic hoist moves it from the assembly table to a skid for transport to the flight deck. This well-trained crew is efficient, completing the ordnance assembly in about a minute. One of the ship's 9 ordnance elevators brings the bomb to a staging area, or bomb farm, located on the flight deck's starboard side.
Inspect lugs and fin for alignment and security.
After one last inspection, the G3s hand custody of the bomb to the squadron's own ordnance crew. They'll load the weapon onto an F-18. There's no room on the flight deck for pneumatic hoists, so this 6-person team must lift the bomb by hand and carefully lock it into place on the F-18's wing. For leverage, they use metal poles, nicknamed hernia bars.
Bring it up! Forward! Forward, straight up! Left forward! Lock down, take it! Hook support weapons, weight braces in and inboard! Up forward!
Finally, the bomb is safely locked and tightened into place. At this stage, with the dumb bomb tightly attached to the plane, the crew can arm it for combat with an exploding fuse. Flying a daytime mission requires concentration and focus. But when the sun goes down, pilots face the most challenging aspect of naval aviation: night flight.
It's something that a lot of people never really get used to. I don't think the Wright brothers would have invented an airplane if they had flying at night in mind, especially off of an aircraft carrier. It's not something that's necessarily fun, but it will get your heart beating.
Many combat missions are flown under cover of darkness, so aviators must also train this way. Yet at night, no horizon is visible, and pilots can easily lose a sense of their surrounding space.
On an exceptionally dark night, which we'll have when there's no moon or when there's weather above us blocking out the moon and the stars, it can be very disorienting.
During a landing, pilots shift their focus to the flight deck's meatball to guide them in. Yet they often don't realize how close they are to the carrier. And the touchdown can be a jarring surprise.
It can go south very quickly when you're landing on the carrier at night. You just revert to your training and don't think about it. If you think about it, you're going to be dead.
If a pilot's glide slope is incorrect by even a small margin, he could strike the back of the carrier, as this F-18 did on the Regan in January 2006. The pilot ejected safely, but the plane was lost in the ocean. Still, despite the ever-present danger, these naval aviators are well-trained, and they rely on their years of experience to fly and land safely.
You gotta kind of stay relaxed and stay focused on what you're doing.
The ship sails back toward its home port in San Diego, California. But first, it makes an important stop at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. To honor American sailors lost here during World War II, the Regan's crew mans the rails for close to 2 hours, including a 15-minute salute to the USS Arizona Memorial. Five days after the stop in Hawaii, the USS Ronald Reagan sails into its home port in San Diego. On shore, families wait patiently for the crew to return, with flags and homemade signs. The long months apart make the homecoming an emotional experience. According to Navy tradition, sailors who've become new fathers during deployment are the first on shore. It's a powerful experience as they meet their newborn children for the first time. They've called this ship home for months. Now they disembark, returning to their family's embrace. This supercarrier's mission is complete.